we go. So, good morning, everybody. This is Lori, and this is Conversations from the Farm. And joining me this morning is the absolutely fantastic Katy Suik. So, I'm going to shut up and let Katy introduce herself. Yeah, and then we'll just have our conversation. So, Katy, it's all yours.
Oh, mine. You've given me all the power.
I
Okay.
have.
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. Lovely to meet you. I am Katy Suik. I don't even know. I am a coach, I guess, in terms of my profession. I work with entrepreneurs and supporting them to build a strong, sustainable foundation so they can actually create a business that is profitable and impactful. I am also a wife of 20 years this year. I feel like you have 20 years this year too, don't you, Lori?
Yeah.
Yeah, we discovered that recently. 20 years this year. We have three monkeys, okay, humans in our house. They are 18, 16, and almost 14. So we are in a different phase of life than we were when things were sneaky crazy with little people, which it was. And what else can I tell you? I live in Prince George, BC, Canada. I am a nature lover, love to be outside as much as possible. I'm a runner, a walker, and yeah, I love a good book. I love personal growth and development. That's sort of my jam. Love to think about what we could do to be growing as human beings because then it helps the collective when we all grow and improve. And so that's what I'm here to do. That's me in a nutshell.
Cool, cool. And I can speak to Katy's brilliance because she is coaching me right now. And God bless her. She's super sweet, but my God, she's got a heavy hammer, man. She's making sure we're doing our homework. She's pushing me in ways that people haven't pushed me in years, which is really good. And
Mm,
I'm not negative about that at all. I love the
no.
fact that it's happening, even though I might grumble a whole lot privately.
Why did I sign on with her? What was I
Yeah, what
thinking?
was I thinking? Yeah, I mean, we've had our moments, but it's flowing now, and it's coming together brilliantly, and it's a lot of stepping out of the comfort zone and just really focusing. Like, for those that don't know, Katy's business, she focuses on helping you get your clarity in terms of where you want to go with your business. And while I had it up here, I never put it down on paper. So putting it down on paper and trying to get really clear is like, what? It's tough. It's a tough slog, right? So,
And not
hey,
only are you getting clear within yourself, but you got to get clear so that people who are considering your services are clear, because
yeah,
that's where there can be
absolutely.
a gap. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that big gap there. And so it's absolutely lovely. And for anybody that's interested, you can either get in touch with me or get in touch with Katy. And she's got more programs coming up, and I can't recommend them enough. So I will do a video and a written testimonial for her later. But yeah, that's my blurb for the morning. So, Katy, you live in Prince George. Where did you grow up, my dear?
I grew up in Vanderhoof,
Mm-hmm.
BC. My folks still
Hooterville.
live there. Yeah, the Hooperville. I grew up there. We lived on the beautiful Sinkit Lake. So there is a road called Sinkit Lake Road and beautiful view, beautiful mountain, if you want to call Sinkit Mountain a mountain. And I lived there until I was 16. And then I went to a boarding school in Saskatchewan, of all places. And yeah, I came home here and again, and then lots happened. And eventually I wound up back in Prince George after saying I would never, ever live anywhere near Vanderhoof ever again. But when you say never, you're pretty much saying, yeah, it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I swore years ago I was never going to move back to Prince George, and I've been back like a boomerang, been back two or three times, and we've been here now for 6, 7 years, and we're not going anywhere after this. We're staying.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it just
I
happens.
hear you.
Okay, so
Totally.
what else does Katy want to talk about today? So let's just throw it open. It doesn't have to be business, but it can be, or it can just be just life in general. I mean, that's what these conversations are all about, right?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Well, I think, I mentioned it earlier, the whole personal growth, whether you're in business or not.
Mhm.
I think, and I love speaking into this because you're in that world too, Lori, especially with what you do. You really support people in the healing process, especially if they're grieving over the loss of something that helped shape their identity.
Mhm.
Um, but um, I really believe this is probably, I think one of the things I talk about a lot is know your why. And I know you've talked about that before as well. Why
Mm-hmm.
is it important to me to run a business? But to me, it's not even just about the business. I have a life why. And it is to be a pebble in the pond of life, creating ripples of love, light, and possibility. So for me, love, light, and possibility are they're kind of embedded in what I do as a wife, what I do as a parent, what I do as a friend, what I do as a coach, as an entrepreneur, because I want to obviously love, number one, and not the cheesy kind of love, but the kind of love that can be tough sometimes, just love on people. And when I talk about light, I'm talking about lighting up the world for them, but also shedding the things that are heavy so that they feel lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, possibility. I could geek out all day about possibility. Like, we we kind of can settle into a little bit of a box sometimes. We can get really comfortable and cozy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with being comfortable and cozy. But if you really want to live life out loud and experience the fulfillment of everything that life has to offer, you've got to be willing to expand
Mm-hmm.
and to crawl out of the box and expose yourself to things that stretch you and acquire growth from you. And that is where entrepreneurship does that. And I think maybe that's why I love business so much. Lori, you're like, I know. I think that's why I love business so much because it forces you to confront all of your stuff,
Yeah.
every step of the way. And just when you think you're getting somewhere, it's the new level, new devil thing. You're like, oh, I thought I overcame this thing, but actually I only peeled back one layer. So
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well that's like anything we're doing when we're doing any kind of growth, right? It's peeling onions. Sorry.
totally
I
all
have to
good.
keep chewing
All
gum
good.
to keep my mouth moist. Is it well, it's just
All
so
good.
dry right now with like no moisture in the air, and I'm like, ooh, I'm always choking and coughing. But yeah, so the entrepreneur box is not an easy one, and I know I'm sure you've come across it. I certainly have, where there's a lot of people that think, oh, you're in business for yourself, you're rolling in money. If only they knew, right? As entrepreneurs, we generally don't even get a paycheck, right? Like especially in the industry that we're in, we definitely don't get it. But I know lots of people that are in business, and they have, whether it's brick and mortar or whether it's online businesses, where we're all struggling because that's the thing, we don't have that guaranteed paycheck coming in,
Mhm.
right?
Right, right. It's this whole concept of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
always uncertainty. But I interviewed a woman once. Her name's Erica Carrico, and she was a speaker in one of the summits I hosted. And she had a fascinating approach to this. And she said something along the lines of she's a seven-figure per month earner. Like she does extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
But she also said, here's the caveat. I might bring in, say, six figures per month, but then a seven-figure earner. So she would say, if I bring in $100,000 in a month, you've got to remember that I'm spending $80,000 on ads to
Yeah.
get there. So I'm really having $20,000 a month. And then you've got to think about your overhead and your
Mm-hmm.
staff and all that. So she said people, especially in the online space, will go on and on about making their millions, so to speak, but they're
Yeah.
not telling you about the expenses they're putting out.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, I mean, you can look at money and the accumulation of wealth as it all comes back to the story you have around money too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you're employed and you work for a job and you're making X number of dollars per year, that's what you're making per year. You might increase a small percentage the next year, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same expansion reach that you do as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, but it could work the other way as well.
Oh
So it
yeah.
really is. Here's
you
your
know
hard.
it's sixes and sevens, and it depends on where you go. And the leap to go to self-employed, what was that like for you? Like what was that leap?
Oh, it was
What?
like a kid grabbing onto mom's leg and trying to go play with all the kids and running back to mom's leg. And um, for me, what was that like for me? Oh, well, I was pregnant with my second. Um, so in July of 2007, I had Callan, my middle one, And I had been back. I went on mat leave. I was working for the college at the time, doing a recruitment role, student recruiter. And I went back to talk about my return to work plan to be informed that I was being bumped because they'd done a bunch of restructuring and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, of course, I freaked out because now I had two little people in my house, and how was I going to pay the bills? But there was also a part of me that was like, I really don't want to do this job anymore. Like, I was so sick of it. Like, let's be real. I was
Yeah.
so sick of it. I'd been doing student recruitment for, I think, 4 years at that point, and it's one of those jobs that gets old fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it put me in a bit of a spin, and I was like, what can I do? What do I even want? And
Mm-hmm.
that's when coaching kind of came across my radar, and I was like, oh, that sounds like me. So I did my training, I went through all the things, and I managed to graduate from the program 1 month before my son, my youngest, was born in April of 2010. So basically, when I say I started my business in 2011, I say so from a place of imagine having a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a new baby. Like, I started my business, but I only had so much bandwidth. And
Yeah.
so, but at the same time, by the time Carter, my youngest, was a year old, it didn't make sense to go back to work because I had three little people that I would have had to pay daycare for.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a struggle, like a huge struggle for a lot of years, really. I did eventually go back on a part-time basis in and out of the college, different roles that I stepped into part-time, and tried to supplement my income that way, tried to build my business in the other way. But ultimately, the transition was not immediate. It was gradual, and I went through phases where I like to say I broke up with my business. I'm like, I hate you. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because it was so deflating. So we broke up, but then I'd miss my old, flame, and I would find a way to get back together. So finally in 2020, I think was the year that, of course, we all know what happened that year, but I explored online a lot more, and I signed up for leadership training. I joined a coaching mastermind. I started doing things, investing in myself, because I knew that what I was doing for that 10 years up to that point was not working. Like, it
Yeah.
just wasn't sustainable. So I was like, I either jump and learn to fly,
Mm-hmm.
or I go backwards and be miserable. So and yeah, so that was the year that I left for good. But I did have, and I still have, a part-time gig where I work for a society that supports families who have deaf or hard of hearing kids, because I
Mm-hmm.
myself am clinically deaf. And so that's something near and dear to me. It's very part-time. It's just something I do on the side. But the goal this year is actually to transition out of that as well
Mm-hmm.
and step onto the board. Um, so really the transition has been like a revolving door, out of the college, back in, out in, but
Mm-hmm.
2020, I've never gone back. And while I do supplement my income with other things sometimes, I find that the more I commit to what I'm doing, the more I trust myself, which was
Mm-hmm.
huge getting to
Yeah.
that point, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
more things are coming together.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that because way back in a million years ago in the dark ages, in the 90s, late 90s, I was I was an executive assistant, and I had a couple of, way back in that days, that's when I was doing dog sledding, and I had 6 or 7 Siberian Huskies, and I was training and having fun and doing silly stuff with them. And I got contacted by an animal training company that said, "Hey, we heard that you have sled dogs and we're looking for some for a production." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." I really wasn't that interested. But they came out, took pictures of and at that time I only had, I think, 6 or 7, and I had them in one pen, like loose in a pen, and they were running around and being silly buggers. And the trainers were absolutely horrified because, oh my God, you can't keep animals that way. I'm like, what do you mean you can't keep animals that way? Like, they're pack animals. This is how we live. And when we come in at night, they all sleep in crates in the house, except for my special 3 that slept on the bed with me, like,
Are
and
you
out
telling
of,
me you had favorites? You
yeah,
were playing
no, not at
favorites.
all. But, they were the ones that started it for me. And so from there, I ended up doing 3 months of a TV show called Call of the Wild, and we did a whole bunch of commercials in the meantime. And then I went back to my 9 to 5, which was like, oh my God, I wanted to hang myself. I hated it because having had that freedom of, like, I had to answer to somebody, I had to answer to the head trainer, but I was basically doing my thing, and it was my passion and my love. And then I went back for a few months and they contacted me for another production. And my boss said to me, well, you have to make a decision. You're either going to do that or you're going to do this. And I said, well, I guess in 3 months I made as much at the movies as I did in a whole year here. So I guess my decision's made, right? And I left. I just took the leap right then and there and went into animal training, and then ended up moving into the interior again on a hope and a prayer. Met somebody at a race that said, hey, you should come up here and do tours with me. Okay. Not a clue. I didn't have a stinking clue about any of it. And suddenly I was doing like the B&B and the clients overnight and clients staying for weeks at a time and going out and doing tours with no plan. I pretty much operated like that for 25 years.
That's
But it worked, right?
amazing.
It
Yeah.
worked. It really did, because it was so different. But I did all of it, and it was, that was the big leap. And then when I got really sick and I had to place my dogs and I couldn't do the job anymore, it's like, what are you going to do when you grow up, right? And I didn't know. So I ended up then doing all the training I did to do the certification and do the work that I do now. And I did start that business again, not really with an actual business plan, which drove my one brother, who is a business genius, crazy. But I had it up here. And, I mean, the story goes on and on and on. And I have gone back to work to regular 9 to 5 type jobs off and on periodically to supplement, because I am a resource wife and, we have downtimes. And it's frustrating as hell because I hate it. I hate
Right.
answering that 9 to 5 drone. And not that that's a bad thing, because I mean, if you're bent that way, that's great, but I'm too independent and I don't put up with BS. And when, as you know, when you get into organizations, there's always something chaotic going on, and it's always negative and it's always toxic. And I've divorced myself from all of that kind of crap because I can't live in that. I grew up in
Yeah.
chaos. I don't need to work in chaos, and I don't need to live there
Mm.
as a senior citizen, which I am now. I don't need to live there, right? So yeah,
Mm.
that was my leap. But to go back and forth, I get that, going back and forth, and I don't know that I could have done it at all if we had kids.
Mm.
So my hat's off to you, to you, and to anybody that does entrepreneurship on their own with kids. I'm like, oh my God, it's so hard.
Yeah. Well, I have to, obviously, I'm grateful for my husband.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we could never live off of just his income alone, but at least that created stability, the standard 8 to 5 type stability that we needed. And he's
Mm-hmm.
really been patient because there's been a lot of like up and down and all around. And he's just like, I think he'd never outright said it, but there's probably a part of him that was just like, why don't you just get a real job so we can have some stability for once? I'm like, no, nope, I'm gonna just get back on the roller coaster. And
Might be married to the
yeah,
same man. Although I think any of
maybe.
us that do this work, probably our husbands are, we're very fortunate that our husbands are that supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know that there is truly completely different worldviews when it comes to entrepreneur versus employee.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not that one is better than the other at
No,
all,
no.
but it is a worldview. And so for me, I operate a lot from intuition, and my spirituality is important to me. And I do the thing that I feel called to do.
Yeah.
And my husband's like, I just pay the bills. Like I just do what I'm good at and blah. But I'm called. I'm like a fairy with pixie dust.
Mine always says to me, oh, you're doing your woo shit again. He doesn't get it. He doesn't want to, and that's fine.
Yeah, well, it's the analytical brain, right?
Oh yeah.
The it's kind of a bit of black and white type thinking. It's either black or it's white, or there might be a bit of gray, but there's no color. Come on, like that's
Yeah.
just getting ridiculous.
Oh
Yeah,
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 yeah. And when we first
funny.
got together, people used to laugh and say, "Oh, like he just does everything." And I'm like, "No, like that I push and I run and that he's whipped and stuff like that." And I have to. It's like, "Oh, you guys just don't know my husband." And his mom said to me when she first met me, and she was so happy that he finally met a girl that could give him back as good as he dished out. I'm like, really?
Oh,
But he's amazing. He's wonderful. And he, like I'm the ideas person. I'm a Gemini. I'm bop, bop, bop. I got 8 million things running in my mind at the same time. And I'll go, hey, what do you think? And he'll go, no. I'm like, no, no, no. You need no.
right?
But then
No, hear me out, hear me out, hear me out.
hear me out, right? And so he'll say, okay, he'll hear me out and he'll think about it for a while. And he's a thinker. He's super introspective, and he will think and think and think, and then he'll come up with he'll come back and say no or yes. And when he says no, it frustrates me because I can see, and he's like no, and he's right. He's always
Yeah.
right, which is a woman that's just like wrong on so many levels. But it's the reality, right? So I'm up here and he keeps me grounded, and it's not in a bad way. It's a
No.
brilliant match, and it is what you say. It's that total difference in personality and in worldviews, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'm super blessed. I know
I
it.
like to, yeah, I picture us like in the hot air balloon, and they're the ones that have us tethered to the ground. Like, you can go up there,
Mm-hmm.
do your woo, do your thing, but I'm making sure you're not taken way off into the outer space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I appreciate the heck out of it. It's so funny as because I mean this conversation, I know you a little bit. I've worked with you a little bit. I've known you off and on. I think I went when I first moved here, you were holding some kind of a it was not a workshop, it was an introductory thing, and you were holding it at the coast with Amy. Is it Amy?
Oh, a networking event?
Yeah, yeah, way back in like 2017 or
Way.
2018 or something. So I've known you off
Yes.
and on, like in the periphery for a long time, but to be able to sit and have this conversation and share, like it's so funny, right? We end up they say you attract like attracts like, and it's very true, even though we don't know each other very well, there's a lot very similar issues in our lives. Which is fun to have these conversations and reach out and realize, you know what, I am gathering my tribe in. I'm gathering the people that think the way I do and feel the way I do about
Mm-hmm.
things. Yeah.
100%. The other thing that's been fascinating, and I realized this the other day, I was reflecting on what has transpired in the last 6 months
Mm-hmm.
ish. And I attended the networking event that you guys host. And I think the first one I came to might have been July of
Mm-hmm.
last summer. And it was just fun because it was just a conversation. And I recognized you. I had met you before. I'd met Carol before. There were some other ladies I didn't know, but it just felt really good to be there. And the thing about being in the online world is I've made so many connections, like countless people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been amazing. But in the flesh is a different experience. It's like, whoa, this is three-dimensional. You want to actually touch the person, like, are you real? So to get a real hug, it's pretty cool.
It is.
Um, but the beautiful thing is that when it comes to being an entrepreneur and really just showing up to serve and support and just be a part of something, comes back to you like good karma. Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was, I think it was the August one. I came to the event. I think I did my talk at that point. It was a
Mm-hmm.
small group, but ended up with a client from that.
Yeah.
And then somehow I managed to rope you and Carol in
Mm-hmm.
and bring you with me. So it's so powerful and wonderful because you know these people, but you never know
Yeah.
if they're eventually going to be a client. You just never know. And
Mm-hmm.
I never would have expected it either. It
Yeah.
just happens.
And the
So
thing is, in those kinds of situations, I don't know about you, but I don't go in expecting that I'm going to get clients. It is about
exactly.
making those connections, right? And so yeah, it's brilliant. It's so beautiful. It's a beautiful organic way to meet people, and yeah, I love that aspect of it, and that's why I do it.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
why I do it. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because it's so difficult, particularly here in the north. I mean, Prince George, God bless it, I love Prince George. Grew up here, back here a couple of times as an adult, and it's an interesting dynamic when you're in business because there's definitely the old guard, right? And then there's the transient or the newer population, and there the two shall meet no matter what happens. So it's really difficult to, if you're not part of that original group, it's really difficult when you come back to make those
Right.
connections, right? And to
Mm.
learn who's doing what. And that was the other reason we started the networking thing, is like, because who's who in the zoo? Carol was new here, I was new after many years, not new, but new. And most of the people that I
Recycled. You were recycled.
yeah, and most of the people that I knew growing up here have either moved on or passed away. Like there's very few of them that are still here. So where do you start?
Yeah.
And there's not that many opportunities for networking here in town, which is really
Yeah.
sad. So yeah, that was the big reason behind why we do what we're doing with that piece.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that you were able to come to that session, and that you've become part of the organization, and that we're now in each other's lives, because I think that's really cool.
Hmm.
And yeah, so coming up, there's Easter coming up. What do you guys do for Easter? Let's go on a personal note, because I could talk business
Yeah,
forever, you know.
I know, right?
I could get into it
Oh,
crazy. Yeah, so
yeah.
yeah, what kinds of stuff are you guys
Easter.
doing? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so no big plans. I grew up going to church like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So, ironically, that was the tradition, and I did not love it. So my own family and I, we just get together with the family.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it's warming up. I hope I didn't curse things by saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to be family time, downtime, lots of walks. My kids are at the age now where it's not cool to hang out with mom and dad. So,
Yeah.
there's that. But
Mm-hmm.
we do have my brother lives in town with his family, so we're gonna have a big dinner on Sunday,
Nice.
and we're gonna be rebels. We're not gonna do the turkey thing, which is what we were all raised to have every Easter. We're gonna do something totally different, like a barbecue.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
What about
Yeah.
you?
Oh, well, it's just Tom and I. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just us. So I'm doing ham. And normally for the holidays, because Tom doesn't like turkey. I love it, but it's just too much for just one or two of us, right? So he always has to be ham with a bone. So the last few holidays, I've said, "What do you want?" And it's like ham and French fries. Or he wanted one year, he wanted hot dogs and French fries. I'm like, "Well, I'm not doing hot dogs." So we're doing ham, and then like, yeah, we'll do a small dinner for us, which is not a big deal. But I mean, it's beautiful weather, so thank God. And we got some fencing and stuff to do down at the pasture for the
Mm.
horses, so we'll be doing that, which is great. And being able, with the nicer weather, to spend more time down there with them. Last weekend was spa day for the horses, so the farrier was here and did all their feet, and we groomed them out. And it's so funny because I say my animals live on benign negligence. They get fed, they get water. In the wintertime, they don't get a lot of attention because I'm not tolerant, which is ironic. I don't tolerate the cold anymore very
Right.
well. So spending any time out there, plus we're wide open, so the wind just howls through here, and it's cold. So I don't go out very often. So now we've been out, and every day I go do my chores. I do the water and stuff like that, and check on them, make sure I'll feed her on the ground and there's no holes anywhere that shouldn't be. And so I'm down this morning, and as I walked in to check on their hay, everybody was right on my shoulder following me around the pasture, which hasn't
Oh.
happened for a long time. So they're really needing that attention, and I'm happy to. It's like, okay, we can be out here doing that kind of stuff, and getting
Mm.
things ready. So with the warm early spring, the only really good thing for me is that we get all the yard work and all the garden prep done. So when it's time to garden, all I have to do is plant. And you haven't been here yet, and I want you out here anytime. My living room is a grow up. There's everything. I planted it in January, most of it. Some of it I planted in February, some I planted earlier this month. But it's just the jungle has taken over one corner of the living room, and it's not a very big room. And then I have another corner in front of my other window that is just full. So we need this warmer weather to stay. So that, I could get used to having, April
Right?
being planting month. I could get used to that in a big hurry, but I don't know that that's going to occur.
It's so unnerving because you just might get them outside and planted, and then all it takes is one day of
Oh
frost, and
yeah.
you're like, aha!
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I, as much as I want to, nothing goes in the ground before the beginning of May. Nothing, nothing, nothing. But yeah,
Mhm.
we're pretty soon going
Yeah.
to have to have ladders to climb over all the plants.
You might need a crane just to plant them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But yeah, so I
Wow.
mean that's all we're doing. We're homebodies anyway, so it's just hanging out here and doing whatever has to be done here and fiddling around. It's always something. We live on the farm. There's always something to do.
Always, always. One of
Yeah.
the things that I would love to learn more about is gardening. I mean, I've always enjoyed doing it, but
Mm-hmm.
do I necessarily understand what should be planted with what and where and what the soil and yada, yada, yada. There's so much science behind it that I feel like it's like taking a chemistry class. Like, I don't understand. So that gets to be something I work on in my growth moving forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, I talked to a lot of people that recently too that are like, oh, I just wish I could. It's like, it's not rocket science. It isn't. I mean, you can go to that extreme, but it is a science project every year, because what works this year may not work next year, and what worked last year doesn't necessarily work this year. And it's always a crapshoot because you never know. It depends on how old your seeds are. It depends on the weather. For the last 3 years, I've not been able to grow peas. Last year, I couldn't.
Mm.
They grew all summer, which normally you get one pick off of them and they're done,
Yeah.
and they just kept growing, growing and growing. I'm like, okay, I'm planting back here again, right? So it just depends, and it's one of those things that when people tell me that, I just like, oh, just do it, just do it. Just have fun with it. I mean, there's some guidelines. There's always guidelines. You can find lots of really good information online, and keep certain vegetables away from other certain vegetables, which is not hard to do if you think about it, rather than just throw stuff in the ground. But yeah, it's fun. I love it. And then I love the canning afterwards and the freezing afterwards. It's a crap ton of work, but boy, it's satisfying when you open the freezer or you open your cupboard and it's there, right? And there's no
Mm.
crap in it because you're the one that did it. And yeah, that's
Mm.
that's a big bonus for us. And one of the things, so is talking about growth and stuff like that. So one of the things that I started recently, and I'm still learning about it. So I think I'm on my third batch as of yesterday. I'm learning how to do sourdough bread.
Ooh.
Yes, I couldn't get the starter to start. I've tried 3 or 4 times, and it either does everything, like it goes like crazy and explodes all over the kitchen, and you can't use it because it's all over the kitchen, or it gets moldy. So I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, my landlord here, her daughter, she just came back from Utah, and her daughter gave her a bunch of starter, and they're calling it Mr. Bubbles because it's a 90-year-old plus starter. And this
Wow.
stuff goes like, oh my God, you feed it just a little bit and it's like boof. So yeah. So I'm having fun with that. But the loaves, I've only got a little Dutch oven. I don't have a big one. So I'm going through a loaf a day. Tom's home. I'm going through a loaf every day. But it's great because there's no sugar in it. It's just flour, water, the starter, and a little bit of salt. That's it.
Mm.
So there's not a lot of sugar, which is good. And it tastes great. So that's fun. But yeah, science experiment. Woo, I'm all
Right?
over
Right?
it.
Look what we have all over the kitchen walls. Yeah, how
Yeah.
big is it?
Yeah, it's fun. So I mean that's one of the things because I like experimenting with stuff. So that's lots of fun. Um
Mm.
yeah. And then I'm looking into there's I don't know what it's actually called where they're using copper wire in your gardens for permaculture. And apparently copper in the ground near whatever it is you're growing helps to make the plants grow better, faster, healthier. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. Cheryl Hanna and Melissa Wolford, who are also in our networking group, they're very into that. So I'm like, okay, we're going to try some of that this year too,
Hmm.
because it's just different, right? Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day, just how complex like reality, our bodies, the earth. There's so many layers in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like the physicality, the energy, the spirituality. Like it's mind blowing, really.
Oh,
And so when
yeah.
you talk about that stuff, like people, you were was it you that was talking about? Yeah, I think it was the grounding mat
Mm-hmm.
that you
Mm-hmm.
were using. I'd never heard of that until you brought it up, and then a friend of mine showed me hers, and I'm like, how does anybody know about this stuff? Like, how does
Yeah.
this? How do people learn that this is a thing,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
create a thing to do the
Yeah.
thing?
Just stuff happens, right? I mean, I know about grounding. I've known about grounding for years, but I not really associated it with, like the mats or the sheets or anything like that. And I mean, that's what we do when we go outside. That's why anybody that's into health will tell you, go outside barefoot in the ground. Gardening is good for you because you get your hands in the ground because you're grounding yourself. And I never really understood the concept of that until the last couple of years, really. I mean, I've been aware of it, but not really focused in on it. And it's like, yeah, okay, you know what? That makes a heck of a lot of sense when you start thinking about
Yeah,
why we do it. And particularly when you live in the city and or in an apartment, right? You never have that option to ground yourself properly because you're surrounded by cement,
it's true. It's
right?
true.
You're surrounded by all of the EMFs and the 5Gs and the 4Gs and all that kind of garbage, all the electromagnetic stuff, and you never get a chance to disconnect from that.
Hmm.
So the grounding that thing makes sense if you can
Yeah.
if you can bring that into your home and into your life. I know since I started using mine, I can't say like a lot of testimonials and the ads and stuff are always like, oh yeah, no, it's instant. Well, I didn't have any instant success with it, but I've noticed over the months that I've been using it, because I sleep on it at night, I am able to get up in the morning and not be super achy,
Hmm.
which is good, right? Like some of my physical issues, because I'm old. I'm not old here, but boy, oh boy, my body's telling me, oh, you pushed it way too hard a few too many times. So, it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
noticing a difference. So I'm sleeping. When I sleep, I'm sleeping better. If my damn cat would leave me alone, I'd be fine. Yeah, so resource wife, hubby's up at 1:30 usually in the morning to go to work in the wintertime. So that's all fine. You get used to that. Now that he's home, the
Your
cat at
body. Oh,
1:30 is
oh.
coming. He doesn't hear it. The cat jumps on the bed, jumps across him, lands on my gut, climbs up my body, hangs here, and bang, 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 scream, 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 scream to get up. I'm like, go away. So yeah, I think he
Mhm.
likes the grounding that too, because during the day when I come upstairs to do stuff, he's lying on my side of the bed where the mat is, which I find
Interesting.
fascinating because he can lie outside anywhere.
So tell me this, you have a cat and you have a jungle in your living room. How does the
Mhm.
jungle not get destroyed by the cat?
He doesn't bother it.
Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, but it's also some of it's in one of those little mini greenhouse tents,
Yeah.
and some of it is just up. I have an old grooming table, and I've got some sawhorses with plywood on it that the plants are all sitting on, and he just doesn't bother. I'm really lucky, very fortunate. If
Yeah.
his sister was still with us, we lost her last year. She disappeared. She never came home. Um, she would have been in it like crazy. And I'm sure he's up in there
Yeah.
in it, but he's not when I see him. He's too busy outside hunting, or he watches, because my chickens are free ranging around the house, and he'll sit up on the window and watch them, or he'll go out and he'll wait until they're in a huddle, and he'll go through them and send them flying. He's horrible. He's horrible. So that
This is what you do for
yeah,
fun on the farm.
yeah, oh yeah, fun stuff, and fun on the farm. So I go out every day, 2 or 3 times a day, to check for eggs and stuff like that. And depending on where the girls are in the yard, like last night, I just about wet myself. I was laughing so hard. They were way over across where the greenhouse is, and I came out with a bucket of scraps for them, and they saw that bucket, and I called them. I went, hey girls, whatever I said to them, and they all, like the whole flock, and it looks they're running as fast as they can to get to the scraps. It's like they're just so funny. I feel like the Pied Piper anywhere I go when the chickens are out, because they're following me everywhere, or they come running from wherever, because I might have something for them.
You might.
I
You
might.
are like God, according to the chicken.
Yeah, but don't touch me. Don't pet me. Don't
Right.
take my eggs when I'm sitting on them. But yeah, I'll come to you when you're feeding me.
That's so awesome. That is so awesome. You got to catch that on film sometime with
Oh,
the
I
chickens
know.
following you.
Yeah,
So
I
funny.
do. I do. I never think to take the phone with me outside when I'm doing stuff, because I usually need to have both my hands to do whatever
Yeah.
I'm going out for. So I'm gonna have to invest eventually in one of those GoPros and just put it on and wear it when I walk around the house.
I was gonna say you need a GoPro or something so you can
Yeah.
just continue on with your day and then have snippets of like fun days on the farm. It'd be
Oh
so fun
yeah.
to watch.
Yeah. The stupidity of it is my life. Anybody that lives on a farm, a lot of people would take that as negativity, but it's not. Like if you live on a farm, it absolutely is. Hollywood can't write this stuff. I've said that before. When I was doing my dog sled tours, I kept journals for 25 years of what was going on, journal entries that I posted online years and years ago. And I turned that all into a book. And that's one of the very first things I said at the very beginning, the foreword is like, Hollywood cannot write this stuff. And people that have read the book are like, oh, how are you still alive?
So true. So
Well,
true.
God looks after fools, drunks, and little children. I'm not sure which one I was at the time.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh,
Um, so with the chickens running wild, do you get wildlife attacking them?
no, no, we're so
Really?
far, touch wood, please God, no. We lost one chicken last summer, but I haven't lost any since. And I think it's just because the cat's around so much, the dogs, there's always movement here. We don't have an issue. I mean, we have coyotes coming through, but they don't come super close because where the houses are situated, there's our landlord's house and then there's our place. And then there's all pasture in front of us. And so in front of us, we have horses, we have donkeys, we have the mules, and donkeys and mules are fabulous for keeping predators away. And then we've got our two dogs are in and out randomly because I won't leave them running loose. And the landlord's shepherd is out cruising the property all the time. So there's no opportunity. I mean, there's lots of opportunity for wildlife. Even last fall, we had for like a week, we had a couple of black bears here, but they didn't come super close. They get so close and then realize there's too much going on and they go away. So for that, I'm grateful. But yeah, no, we don't. I've been really fortunate here. Where we were before, we lost. Yeah, I lost half my flock to ravens, which was brutal. Yeah, I was away doing some training and Tom was looking after the animals, which he wasn't thrilled about. And he phoned me the first day that I was gone and he was just in an absolute lather. He was so upset. Who did you tell you were going away? I'm like, what are you talking about? Half your birds are gone. I don't know where they are. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, well, there was just a body with no head in the coop and then there's the birds are all gone. I'm like, oh, that's ravens. He's like, no, somebody stole them. No. He was convinced somebody had stolen the birds. I'm like, yeah, no. It's just predators. And so yeah, then we had issues, but not here. It's just too busy.
That is so cool. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard, like I had a friend of mine who they lived out by the airport for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And one year, I don't know if it was probably coyotes or wolves. They would come in and one by one those chickens would
Yeah.
get killed, which is got
Yeah.
to be frustrating.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it is absolutely because it takes nothing, and even worse than the coyotes, the thing to watch is the the weasels because they'll go in and they'll decimate the whole flock
Uh,
for no reason other than just to kill them. They don't eat them. I mean, weasels aren't very big. I thought they were big. They're not. They're little. My cats have
mm.
killed when we were at the other place, killed three or four of them. I'm like, really? They're just little. I thought they were big. But yeah, so that's more of a danger. And that coop, my coop is hammered in so freaking tight. There's no way there's anything getting into it. Not at night anyway.
Mm. So do you herd them into the coop at night?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Lock them up. There's been a few times I forgot, but I now have an automated chicken door, which we put on last weekend, which is great. It's on a battery, except that when it's cold, the battery dies, so it doesn't open. So I have to wait a little while. I still have to go out and lock them up at night. But yeah, no, they get locked up for sure.
Do they know at this point, conversations on the farm, teaching the non-farmer all the things, do they understand? Like, is their body clock telling them it's time to go get in the coop?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then so you don't have to go chasing them or
No,
anything like
I
that.
do like, and I tend to because I like to go to bed fairly early because I'm up so early all the time. But with the automatic door, once things warm up, I won't have to worry about it so much. But yeah, if I have to chase them in, it's a freaking gong show. You've heard that saying, herding cats. Well, herding chickens is just as difficult, and because they're not going to go wherever, but they do automatically. Generally, about a half an hour. Like once the sun goes down, they're in the coop.
Interesting.
I had
Okay.
turkeys though; they wouldn't go in. I had to chase the turkeys in, otherwise they'd roost in the trees.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was crazy. So yeah, any kind of crazy stuff. Like I said, Hollywood can't create this.
I
Yeah,
would
it's like
never have thought of that.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. It's funny.
Huh.
Depending on the critters that you have, right? Yeah, the dynamics around the farm are different all the time.
Wow. Wow. I love the chickens in the coop. You gotta coop train them. You know, you think of crib training or kennel training, crate training, coop
Yeah,
training for
coop
the
training.
chickens.
They do it themselves. They know where their safe place is, and that they're quite happy, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. It is.
Huh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would definitely love to get out there and meet all the critters,
Oh
the
yeah.
small ones, the big ones. Do you have cows or no?
No, we don't. Our landlord does. Scott has one. It's a Highland. They're bringing a bull in, I think, as well. And the Highland ones are the really hairy ones with the horns. They're so cute. Like their heads are so massive with all the
Oh,
hair all over their faces. It's so cute. But they're cows, so she's actually pretty good. She's quite mellow and quiet. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
it is. It is interesting because there was a steer here, a bull. No, he was a bull, young one, and he was just there was no fence on the property that could keep him in. He was in and out, and he'd go out in the morning, he'd be on the front deck, or he'd be out, he was just wherever he wanted to go. You couldn't keep him in, but this one likes to stay where she's at. So yeah, it's kind of fun.
Male versus female? I don't know.
I don't
Who
know.
knows? Who knows?
Who knows? Do you have any animals at home, Katy?
We do. We have Duke, who is, I can try to show it for anybody who catches the recording. He always keeps me company down here.
Aw,
Yeah. My little coworker that does diddly squat. He's
yeah.
keep me company. And then we have two cats. And that's why I was asking about the plants. I'm like, the plants have to be up high. And
Hmm.
our cat Loki, that says it all right there.
Yeah.
Loki is a Siamese.
Uh-huh.
And I love him, but he drives me crazy. This morning, so he has a thing. I don't know how he developed this habit. He has a thing that if you have an open bin anywhere, he goes and pees in it. So if you have a laundry bin with clothes in it, guess what he's going to do? He's going to go pee in it.
Yeah.
If he finds any kind of a bin other than cardboard boxes, he won't pee in those. But this morning, I went down to get my breakfast and I turn around and there's a bin, like a grocery bin with grocery bags in it. He crawled into a bag full of bags and decided that was where he was going to do his business. And I freaked out. I'm like, grabbed him and I took the bags and I put him outside and I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's very cute. He's very intelligent. He's very busy.
Yeah.
And he is my husband's cat. Like he is obsessed with him. He goes everywhere he goes. And
Hmm.
our other cat, Millie, is a tabby. She's kind of a bitch.
Yeah.
She doesn't really like anybody, but she once in a while on her terms, she might crawl on my lap and sit, but
Hmm.
it's extremely rare. And
Yeah.
but she's not wild like Loki. She just doesn't get into trouble. She just keeps to herself. So that's my
That's your
animals of this
menagerie.
house. Right?
Yeah. You know what's funny is people don't get it. And I learned this very early on with the Huskies. Because at our peak we had 120. I didn't just have six all along. But that was my full-time job. Um, is what you name your animals, you have to be very careful because they will take on the personality of the name that they're given. So Loki, any Loki I've ever known has been just a real shit disturber. Cat, dog, it doesn't matter. Um, what's another? Oh, my beautiful little Bernese mountain dog, my little girl. Her name is Raven, but it's not Raven with an en, it's Raven with a yn. I should not have named her that because she's the noisiest freaking dog I've ever had. And I
You
wasn't
did
thinking
that.
that. I named her after a character in a book, not the bird. And she just, yeah, the second you go outside, she's bark, bark, run around, bark, 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 bark. It takes her about 10 minutes to settle down. And then she stops barking. But you can't, it's like, oh, dear Jesus, shut up. Noisiest dog ever. Yeah, so
Mm.
I've had a few dogs over the years that, depending on their name, was just. We had a husky he was a great working dog. His name was Tin Man, dumb as a friggin' post. Like nothing there, but boy oh boy, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs to run. But not for anything else. He was like ding, 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 ding all the time.
Wow, wow. We had a Siberian Husky for a very short period of time, way back in our first house.
Mm-hmm.
They are chronic escape artists.
Yep.
After that, we were like, this is too exhausting. Like we had three little people. No, at that time we only had, actually now that I think about it, I feel like we only had the one. But I would get phone call after phone call. I have this
Yeah.
dog here. I'm like, we eventually, actually, there's a really funny story with that, actually. It's
Yeah.
really cool because we got him, we rescued him from the SPCA
Mm-hmm.
and we were like, okay, we want a dog. We bought him home. And then, but we found out that his previous name had been Demon. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Say
Okay,
no
cool.
more.
Yeah. The people that bought him in called him Atka. So we were like, okay, well, we've got Atka. And we had him for maybe 3, 4 months, but he kept running away, kept running away, kept running. We were like, okay, we can't do that. Not when we have little people and stress. So we decided to give this dog to someone that my husband knew he had done work for out in the like North of Chaco area. And we went and gave him away. We were like, he's a lovely dog, but we just don't have the fence that's got the height, and he needs more attention and all the things. Well, this lady that took him in kept telling us, he keeps running away. He keeps running away. I'm like, shocking.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out he was running from her house to the house of his previous owners.
Mm-hmm.
And the previous owners were ambulance drivers, because one day the ambulance was at our neighbors, and he's like, "Hey, that dog in the backyard, is there any chance his name is Demon?" I'm like, "Actually, his name's Akka, but he was Demon." And he's like, "That used to be our dog." And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, we just decided we couldn't handle him anymore, but we were kind of regretting it. I'm like, "Well, you can come say hi to him," because at that time we weren't ready to
Mm-hmm.
part with him. As it turned out, from this one woman's house, he was running back to their house over and over and over. And they finally bought Akka back to this woman and said, this might be a big ask, but we regretted getting rid of him the minute we did. Is there any chance you'd be okay with us taking him back? And she was like, "Oh, of course, yeah." So
Yeah.
he ended up back with his original family, which I thought was so cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. Yeah, they are escape artists from hell, and they're very busy. They're very, very busy. And so if they don't, and it's smart, like that's the thing. People think, oh no, they're not, but they are. They're very, very smart, but they get bored really easy. They're like
Mm.
the ADHD dog of the dog kingdom. And when we had our
Yeah.
kennel down in Bridge Lake, when we had it built, I was adamant with the fencing guys, and I phoned around for weeks to find somebody that would actually do what I wanted to do. And because I said, they said, "Oh, kennel, yeah, we'll give you 6 foot fence." I said, "No, I want 8 foot fence, and I need a 2 foot man door." So it had to be raised off 2 feet off the ground. And they're like, "Why? You don't need that." I said, "Because then I don't have to dig my gate out in the winter. I just have to open it." So I learned a few things along the way, and that was, but yeah, to get an 8 foot. So our penitentiary for the Huskies was 8 feet high and 2 acres. It was
Oh,
huge.
wow.
Yeah. And the runs were big. They were 30 by 40 runs. So I could, in that time, I could mix and match. There were only, I'm going to say, about 10 dogs that I couldn't mix and match anywhere. Like, this dog can go here, these boys can go here, these boys can mix with these boys, these girls, all of that stuff, which was unheard of in the sledding world. You just don't do that.
Um,
It's like, yeah, no, I did, because of how I raised them and how I lived with them. And there was
oh,
absolutely no doubt that I was the boss. Absolutely no doubt. And it would be cool. People would come, and because it was built in it was a big rectangular penitentiary, but the kennels went around the outside. And so they would sing in the morning. We'd have a good morning song. We'd have a good night song. We'd have an after supper song. And it would start at one end of the kennel and go around, and then it would come back around, and then they'd be quiet. And if there's any other noise going on out there, it's because something was going on that shouldn't have. And I could go out on my deck and look out over it and yell at them to knock it off, and it would be dead silent. That's
wow.
not anything I ever trained. That's just how it was.
What
So
a
yeah,
fascinating thing. Yeah, so
yeah, because
fascinating.
we rescued so many over the years, and yeah, it's because they kept escaping, or they'd be left in an apartment, eat their way through the walls and the doors, and people
Mm.
couldn't understand why they did that.
These are animals that need,
They
oh,
need
yeah,
the exercise. They need to be busy. They need a
yeah,
job. Most dogs do need a job, depending on the breed.
totally, totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be really, I mean, as pet owners, we get to be responsible about what
Oh
we're
yeah,
taking on, right? And not, because we had no clue. We had nothing, we
oh
knew
yeah,
nothing about Huskies. It was just a dog. Like, we'll
yeah,
bring the dog home. In the end, he ended up happier than ever, but
yeah,
having Duke, he's a Westie poo, and he's a great dog. I
yeah,
mean, so it works
yeah.
for our family.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you have to find the personality that matches for sure. I could talk
Yeah.
like this all day, but I know you're busy, and we're getting up to our hour. I can't believe it already.
Yeah, we could talk all day long. Yeah. Yeah. No, this has
Absolutely.
been fun.
It
Lots of
has.
fun.
And I thank you very much for joining me today. And I will post a link when I post this all up with Katie's contact information. And thank you, Katy. And we will see
You.
you and chat with you very soon. Have a great, happy Easter.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much, Lori. Talk to you
Okay, thanks
later.
so much. Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.